Hello and welcome to On the Record. I'm Shireen Bhan. Joining me today in our newsroom is a very special guest, the CEO of Deloitte in India, N. Venkatram. Mr. Venkatram, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. You know, we met at the start of the year in Davos, January of 2022, and it was very clear that while there were clouds looming on the horizon, the Russia-Ukraine war was one of them, commodity inflation was another worry that global CEOs were talking about. Things have only gotten worse since then. But India continues to be relatively resilient even through this storm. As you speak with CEOs, both domestically as well as global CEOs, and of course your own colleagues across the world, what's the sense that you get about corporate mood?
Well, certainly. Thank you, firstly, Shireen, for having me here, and happy Diwali to you. And
Happy
to all
Diwali to you as well.
I think that India is still buoyant. I think the mood is still good. A lot of good things happening, a lot of events to come. For example, we have the G20 summit on the horizon as well. As far as the general mood goes, I think services is doing extremely well. And despite the fact that, yes, there is the R word, whether you look in Europe, whether you look at America, people are talking about recession. As far as India is concerned, we shouldn't talk ourselves into it. I think there's still a lot of growth left in India, and for many more years to come, and we should just continue to remain positive, and that's the way most of industry is. The area which I do see struggling a little is manufacturing, and I think within that I would probably hazard a guess to say that if you go down a bit into the MSME sector, it's hard for them as well. But it's not all bad news. I mean, if you look at exports, you do have exports in pharma, you do have exports in engineering. So, well, it's a mixed bag, but all around good.
You know, let's just pick up on some of the aspects that you spoke of there, and let's talk about the manufacturing story. And what is very visible at this point in time is that at the lower end, there is an issue with demand, whether we talk about two-wheelers or, we talk about entry-level passenger cars as well. That is where there seems to be pain. But on the other hand, in the luxury car market, whether it is cars or real estate, sales continue to look very, very strong. So are you seeing a significant divergence in terms of confidence and in terms of spending power and spending capacity as well? And what will that mean going forward?
Well, what you say is true, that on the luxury side, we are not seeing things abate. But the reality is that no one is insulated yet from the shocks that hit the rest of the world. We were a very connected economy, and today, we are talking about geopolitics and, how it affects us. A lot of us are obsessed with what happens on the supply side in terms of supply chains and everything else. But certainly, I would say that prices and inflation are something that have been persisting for us even through the pandemic.
Yeah.
And this is really what I think is slowing down demand. And that's something where if you really talk to the mid-sized sector, they are really contemplating saying we've got to do our price increases. But the big catch is if I do my price increase, does it, just increase my inventory pile up because I can't sell? And that's really the issue that people are facing today. That yes, the stock is piling up, but a price increase is required to reset. But if you do a core price increase, and hopefully optimists like me think that inflation is only till the end of this year and that things will abate after that, then a permanent price increase could actually be damaging to business as well.
Yes, well, we'll have to see how rates pan out. At this point in time, central banks across the world are clear that rates will only have to move higher, including back home with the RBI also moving in tandem with what's happening with the global rates. But, I want to understand what fund flows could possibly look like. It's been a strong report card on the FDI front for India. And, at this point in time, with the kind of conflict that we are seeing in many parts of the world, as well as the specific peculiarities of China and the way that it's chosen to engage with the world and the way that the world is choosing to engage with it, it could mean that we could be beneficiaries. That has been the thesis, that has been the argument that's been put on the table. What is that likely to mean in terms of continued FDI flows?
Well, we did a study, Shireen, about a year and a half ago, and it was recently validated by an independent study done by someone else, that when India is to get to the 5 trillion, you would require about 8 trillion of capital formation, but more importantly, you would require at least $400 to $450 billion of FDI. And that didn't seem very impossible because at the time when we did it, it was about 80 billion. And as you rightly say, when you look at the tracking of FDI today, it is still very strong. China plus one is something where I think we tripped a bit the first time around. I don't rule it out, but that there will still be a lot that will get done in India. But I look at opportunities from some of the other things that are happening, like say currency. At the beginning of the year, we weren't really expecting such a shock on the currency side, the forex side. But if I look at India's strengths and say, how do we play to those strengths? I think currency is a strength to us on the services side. So the 1 trillion that comes from services will become easier because, we've got a stronger dollar. But if I look at the India side, the manufacturing in India, for the large, strong domestic base that we have, and to say that we should first build for India before we look in terms of building for the world, and use this period of recession in other countries to strengthen ourselves, we should look at import substitution. I think the best time for us to look in terms of saying how do we manufacture even components and other products in India is now. Reason? You've got large companies wanting to come in and invest. They're coming not to export. We sometimes make the fundamental error that they want to come to India to export to the world.
No, they want to come essentially
they want to come
service
for
the
our domestic market, right?
Yeah.
That is our strength.
Yeah.
So invite them in, build for the domestic market, encourage indigenization. This is true even for aerospace and defense and all the other areas as well. And if you can indigenize, if I can use that complex word, what you are really doing is import substitution. And you're bringing down the cost and you're de-risking yourself from the impact of fluctuations in the rupee.
This import substitution or indigenization, as you called it, we've seen this play out across different sectors. Defense, of course, is one where you have now, the second or the third list that the government has actually put out, and it's been the case over the last several budgets where this process of import substitution by way of hiking customs duties, etc., has also been in play. But there's also the downside to it that people caution that if you go too much on the other side and you're actually going to be choking the import side of the story altogether, we may have to also suffer the consequences of too much of this. What do you believe we need to be mindful of as we move down this road?
Again, to get on my core theme that play to your strengths, one of our strengths has been design and research. Even today, I mean, we were just doing another study where we saw that I think it was about 700 multinationals actually have their research and development centers in India, the R&D and design center, the engineering design centers in India. If so much of their design and research is getting down out of India, why is it we as Indian companies can't do much more on the R&D and innovation side from India? So I'm just looking at it from that perspective. I'm not looking in terms of protection or in terms of, putting trade barriers at the borders. All I'm saying is if we find innovative jugaad ways of doing things cheaper, why not? And that's really the premise of what I'm saying, that I'm not saying put up a barrier to protect industry. All I'm saying is you have a lot of intelligent people here who can do a lot of things. Do it. The second reason is we all know that we're all getting more insular. As countries, we want more protection. We want to have more self-reliance in our own way. It's not just India that needs self-reliance. India is in a more peculiar situation because of its neighbors and its neighborhood, and therefore we've got to be extra careful. So if you look at, say, semiconductors, I think it makes absolute sense to say that we've got to get there. Will we get there in 2 years or 4 years? Absolutely not. It's going to take a period of time. Are we going to start manufacturing that sophisticated machinery that is required for semiconductors? Definitely not. But we should make a start. And we've done it, to just remind you of an industry where we did it so well. It was the automotive industry years ago. And today, a lot of our automotive component manufacturers manufacture for the whole world. So I'm saying first do it for India. Fundamental premise being you're good at R&D, you're good at design. The next piece which you need is quality. Do it to international quality. I think this is where we sometimes trip up, that we always do believe that the quality for the domestic market can be different from the quality for an international market. It's a bit like cashew export, right? When I was young, we used to get the broken cashews and the big cashews you ate when you went overseas. I don't think we can do that anymore.